On March 15, the Government of Manitoba finally released the text of Bill 64, the Education Modernization Act. First reading took place earlier without any public awareness of what the bill proposed. Over the course of the past 2 months, the Garden Valley School Division Board has familiarized itself with the bill. Our study has led us to join the multitude of voices throughout Manitoba and beyond who believe this bill, if passed, will be extremely harmful. Rather than modernizing education, it will set us back many years. We welcome a transformation of the way K-12 education happens in Manitoba, but believe the path, and particularly the governance path, that Bill 64 proposes raises significant concerns. Believing our community needs to know how Bill 64 will impact the education of our children and impact our community's spirit and values, we are sharing this video presentation with you. Government officials may suggest that we as board members are merely protecting our positions on the school board. Nothing could be further from the truth. Even if this bill is defeated or amended and school boards continue beyond next year, all our terms end at that time, and there is no guarantee that any of us will be re-elected. As persons who have given countless hours to promoting and ensuring a high quality of education within GVSD, our concern is entirely for how this will impact the education of our children and our community values. We are also deeply troubled by the way this bill will politicize education and undercut democracy. The current reality and what would happen if Bill 64 is passed are contrasted on this slide and the next slide. Please notice how everything will shift from local decision making to decisions being made by a government-appointed provincial education authority. Having a say in who gives leadership to our schools, as well as all assets, even ones that many of you raised money for, will be turned over to a Winnipeg-based provincial education authority. The contrasts on this slide continue the theme. Local voice and local choice will be destroyed. A government-appointed body of 6 to 10 people meeting in an office in Winnipeg will have all the authority over programming, policies, purchasing, and even school closures. Our question is this: how can they possibly understand the unique, specific needs or cultural values within each of the 700 or so schools in Manitoba? What does this mean for GVSD families? The list of items on this page and the next are of deep concern to us. A quick glance at the details on this slide invites a question. Should the leaders of our schools, the priorities and policies of local schools, the culture and values of our local schools, be shaped by a board whom you elected, a board who lives in and knows the community, and a board who is fully accountable to you? Or should they be determined by a government-appointed committee living outside our community? What will Bill 64 do? It will eliminate local voice, and even more significantly, local choice on things that we believe fundamentally matter to you. Bill 64 proposes one school division or board that oversees all education decisions in 15 regions. Our region includes the areas of the present Garden Valley School Division and the Western School Division, based in Morden. This map illustrates the regions by color. We would be part of the light green division in the bottom center of the map. When you observe the massive geographical areas covered by some other regions, we feel fortunate at our relatively small size. Glancing at the Bill 64 organizational diagram, it quickly becomes apparent what a top-down model is being proposed. The Minister of Education and the Provincial Education Authority Committee he or she appoints have all ultimate decision-making power. Local voice and local choice disappear entirely. The remaining slides provide job descriptions for each of the entities involved in educating our children. The government-appointed Provincial Education Authority is responsible for all major decisions, policies, programming, and hires. This single education authority will then appoint directors of education for each region. Directors who are employees of the Provincial Education Authority and whose duty it is to carry out the Provincial Education Authority's mandates. To make it appear as if some local voice exists, Bill 64 includes the formation of a Provincial Advisory Council on Education. But please note carefully, each region will have only one voice on this council. And more importantly, this council can do nothing more than make suggestions to the regional directors, the Provincial Education Authority, and the Minister of Education. We all observed how the government chose to ignore many of the recommendations made by the K-12 Education Commission, who they themselves appointed. The government repeatedly talks about how appointing school community councils for each school will give parents much more say in their children's education. Please take careful note of two key words on this slide and the next. Those words are may advise. The list of may advise items continues, but what's highlighted in yellow is key. There will be no power associated with this council. All power lies in the Provincial Education Authority in Winnipeg. We might also add that the Manitoba Association of Parent Councils, a group that oversees and resources the work of the present parent advisory councils, is strongly opposed to this new bill and this new model of governance. In this top-down, centrally controlled by government model, we finally get to the schools. Most striking here is the fact that principals are being perceived as managers rather than as educational leaders. Thanks for staying with this presentation till this point. We have only 4 slides remaining. This one highlights a key principle underlying Bill 64. Any position of significance will be an appointed rather than an elected position. Bill 64 seriously undermines democracy. As you examine the government's transition plan, note especially the final 3 bullets. Make no mistake, all local voice and choice will disappear. The transition timeline proposed aims that all of this will happen by the summer of 2022. This slide summarizes our greatest concerns. There is no evidence in Bill 64 that the quality of education within Manitoba will be improved. This is something that would excite us as boards and parents and communities. Instead, Bill 64 appears to be an attempt to eliminate democracy and centralize decisions regarding the education of our children. Please ask yourselves, do you want an appointed education authority in Winnipeg setting direction for the schools in GVSD? Or do you want persons you elect and who are accountable to you setting that direction? That's the key question. If you share the concerns we outlined, we invite you to consider several possible paths to make your voice heard. Consider registering to speak to Bill 64. consider sending a letter to your MLA or calling him. Consider attending the government town halls, which will be happening in the coming months. Our GVSD website includes a page which tells you how to register to speak to the bill and why it is important. It offers sample letters you could use if writing your own letters feels overwhelming. And it offers some questions you may want to ask when attending a government town hall. And if you have questions or would like to discuss any aspect of this presentation or Bill 64 itself, please contact any member of our school board. Our names and contact information are also provided on the website. Thank you for listening, and thank you for caring.